Look at their faces, chiseled from marble, carved with divine symmetry, eyes without pupils, cheeks of iron, brows of steel. They look wise, calm, godlike. Statues of the Roman emperors, frozen in time, untouched by the weight of mortality. They were fathers of nations, builders of cities, commanders of armies. But now, they stare out at us from museum halls and dusty textbooks, and we think we know them. Augustus, the noble founder; Nero, the mad arsonist; Caligula, the monster; Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king; Constantine, the emperor of Christ. We think we know what they looked like, what they thought, who they were. But what if we were wrong? What if those statues are just masks? What if the true face of the emperors, the real men behind the myths, was something far more human and far more terrifying? Because when you strip away the marble, when you silence the poets, when you erase the propaganda, you don't find gods, you find men. Flawed, paranoid, glorious, and afraid. This is the story the statues don't tell. This is the true face of the Roman emperors. The image of power. In Rome, power wasn't just taken, it was displayed. The emperors didn't rule with iron alone, they ruled with images, sculpture, coins, architecture, even names. It began with Augustus. After winning the civil war that followed Caesar's assassination, Octavian took the title Augustus, meaning the exalted one. He rejected the title of king. He claimed to be restoring the republic, but in truth, he became its first emperor. And to sell that lie, he sold an image. Statues of Augustus show him forever youthful, his face serene, his pose heroic, arm raised, toga perfectly draped, barefoot like a god. He was over 70 when he died, but no statue shows him old. Why? Because to the Romans, the emperor wasn't just a ruler, he was Rome itself. And Rome had to be eternal. Every coin that passed through a soldier's hand carried the emperor's face. Every column that rose in a new city bore his name. But these weren't just ego. They were weapons, visual propaganda, political branding, spiritual intimidation. You weren't just fighting Augustus, you were fighting the sun. And this didn't stop with him. Every emperor, good or bad, followed the same pattern. They shaped their image not just with stone, but with fear, myth, and memory. But behind every perfect bust was a man, sweating, aging, doubting, and dying. The making of an emperor. So, what did it actually mean to be emperor? It meant absolute power. It meant that your word was law. But it also meant that your enemies were everywhere. Inside the Senate, inside your army, inside your own family. There were no elections, no term limits, no retirement plans. There were only 3 ways to stop being emperor: death, assassination, or abdication. And the last one almost never happened. So emperors lived in a state of constant fear. They built private spy networks, used food tasters, consulted astrologers, carried out purges. Paranoia wasn't madness, it was survival. Take Domitian. He executed 12 senators in 1 week because of a dream he had.
Or Tiberius, who withdrew from Rome entirely and ruled from a fortress island, surrounded by soldiers who were forbidden to look him in the eye. Every emperor had a lictor, a personal guard who carried the phases, a bundle of rods and an axe. It symbolized their power to punish or kill. And behind the throne stood the Praetorian Guard, the emperor's private army. But they weren't just bodyguards. They were king makers. They could make or break an emperor, and they did, more than once. So power wasn't peace. It was a tightrope over a pit of daggers. Even the greatest emperors knew this. And it shows in their faces, in their real ones, not the statues. Tired eyes, sunken cheeks, lines of fear. They weren't gods. They were prisoners of power.
The faces behind the marble. Now, let us tear away the stone masks. Let us meet the men behind the empire. Not their titles, not their legends, their faces. And in each one, we see what power creates and what it destroys. Augustus, the puppet master in a god's robe. We begin with the one who started it all, Gaius Octavius, known to history as Augustus. The statues show us perfection, youth, beauty, poise. But the truth? He was a manipulator, a political assassin, a survivor. When Caesar was killed, Augustus was just 18. But within months, he had rallied Caesar's legions, hunted down the assassins, and formed the Second Triumvirate, a three-man dictatorship that ruled Rome with purges and proscriptions. He sent soldiers to kill rivals. He used propaganda to rewrite his image. He even exiled his own daughter for threatening his legacy. By the time he was emperor, he had reshaped the Roman world. But even as he aged, his statues never did. He made sure the world remembered not the man, but the myth. Caligula, the madman or the mirror. His name was Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus, but the world remembers him as Caligula, Little Boots. The child of a war hero, raised on the front lines, adored by the army. At first, Rome loved him. He threw lavish games, freed political prisoners. He even declared tax breaks. But then something broke. Illness, trauma, or something darker. He began demanding to be worshipped as a god. He built a bridge across the Bay of Baiae just to prove a prophecy wrong. He executed senators for looking at him the wrong way. He even appointed his horse as a priest, maybe even a consul. His busts, calm, youthful, noble. But the real Caligula was chaos in a crown. Was he insane, or just holding a mirror to Rome's hunger for divine rulers? We don't know, because after 4 years, he was stabbed 30 times by his own guards. Nero, the artist who burned a city. He fancied himself a poet, an actor, a musician. Nero Claudius Caesar, he ruled from age 17, and for a while, Rome thrived. Then came the fire. 64 AD, Rome burns. 10 of the city's 14 districts turned to ash. Did Nero set it? Some say yes, some say no. But what matters is the story he let the world believe. He didn't run to fight the fire. He performed in silk robes as the city turned to smoke. Afterward, he blamed the Christians, had them crucified, burned alive, fed to dogs. He built a golden palace on the ruins, complete with an artificial lake and a 100-foot-tall statue of himself. His statues show youth and softness, but his real legacy is fire, paranoia, and a lonely end. Nero died in exile, with no allies left, whispering, "What an artist dies in me." Domitian, the ghost emperor,
Some emperors ruled with flair. Domitian ruled with fear. He revived old Roman values, discipline, moral reform, military focus. He fought Germanic tribes, restored the economy, finished the Colosseum. But no one smiled in his presence. He rarely showed his face. He signed documents, "Our Lord and God commands it." He lived in paranoia, and perhaps with reason, because in 96 AD, he was stabbed in his bedroom by palace officials, including his own wife. The Senate tried to erase his name. They smashed his statues, chiseled his name off inscriptions, issued a damnatio memoria, a damnation of memory. But you can't kill a ghost. Today, some historians think he was one of the most efficient emperors in history, just unloved.
Hadrian, the wall builder. Some emperors tried to expand the empire. Hadrian tried to define it. He drew borders, literal ones. Hadrian's wall in Britannia was his message: this far, no further. He was a Greekophile, spoke the language fluently. He rebuilt the Pantheon, traveled more than any emperor before him. But he was also brutal. He crushed a Jewish revolt with terrifying force. Thousands crucified, cities flattened. He had his lover Antinous deified after the man drowned, built statues in his honor across the empire. His bust shows a philosopher's beard, calm eyes, but behind them was a man obsessed with control and grief. He ruled for 21 years, and when he died, he left behind walls, wounds, and a marble empire that still stands. Commodus, the gladiator emperor. Lucius Aurelius Commodus, son of Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, born into greatness and then dragged it into the dirt. He fancied himself a god, a gladiator. He performed in the Colosseum, fighting animals, pretending to be Hercules. He renamed Rome Colonia Commodiana. Statues show him in lion skins with a club, a demigod. But the Senate saw a clown. He executed rivals, killed senators for sport, drove the economy to ruin. Eventually, his inner circle had enough. He was strangled in his bath by his wrestling partner. The man who thought he was a god died naked and gasping. Diocletian, the cold architect. When Diocletian took the throne in 284 AD, the empire was in chaos. He ended that by dividing it. He created the Tetrarchy, 4 rulers, sharing power across East and West. He created new coinage, tax systems, military reforms, and he persecuted Christians with chilling efficiency. His busts show strength, symmetry, stone-like calm. He ruled with an iron grip. And then he did the unthinkable. He retired voluntarily. He built a villa in Croatia and grew vegetables. When asked to return to power during another crisis, he replied, "If you could see the cabbages I've grown, you wouldn't ask." Diocletian left on his own terms. Almost no one else did. Constantine, the Emperor of the Cross. Last we meet Constantine, born of a soldier's bloodline. He fought a civil war for the throne, and before a decisive battle at the Milvian Bridge, he claimed to see a vision in the sky. In this sign, conquer, the Chi Rho, the first symbol of Christ. He put it on his standards, his shields, and he won. From that day, he legalized Christianity, built churches, founded Constantinople. He wasn't baptized until his deathbed, but he changed the empire forever. Rome was no longer pagan, and Constantine, he became the first emperor to rule by divine right from a Christian god. These were the faces behind the statues, not gods, not demons, men. Some cruel, some noble, some brilliant, all dangerous. Not because they ruled the world, but because the world let them. What does power do to a man? What does it feel like to be obeyed without question? To hear your face carved into stone while you're still alive? To hear senators call you Lord as they sharpen daggers behind your back? Most of us will never know, but Roman emperors lived with it every single day, and it changed them. Because absolute power doesn't just reveal a man's character, it distorts it, twists it, drowns it. The emperor's loneliness. Imagine you're the emperor. You sit alone in a vast marble palace. You are surrounded by guards, advisors, generals, priests, but you can't trust any of them. Every word you hear is filtered. Every glance could be a threat. Every meal could be poisoned. You sleep with a dagger under your pillow, because the only thing more dangerous than being a Roman emperor is trying to replace one. Some broke under the pressure. Caligula heard voices. Nero obsessed over performances. Commodus turned the empire into a circus. Others became ice. Diocletian withdrew from Rome. Domitian created a kingdom of silence and fear. Diocletian rewrote the government to eliminate emotion entirely. The illusion of immortality. Power also seduced. You could command thousands with a whisper. You could kill a senator and rewrite the story by morning. You could build cities and name them after yourself. So why stop at ruling like a god when you could become one? Caesar was deified. Augustus declared son of the divine. Caligula demanded temples. Constantine's vision of the cross would reshape all of Europe. Each emperor faced the same dilemma. Was he a man or a myth? And when you start believing the myth, that's when the cracks form, because reality always comes back, with poison or a sword or a whisper in the night. And then the statue is all that's left.
The masks we remember. Walk into any museum. You'll see them. Busts, statues, coins, all bearing the faces of emperors long dead. But what are you really looking at? Not portraits, not likenesses, not truth. You're looking at masks, designed by artists, approved by emperors, built for eternity. Damnatio memoriae, the erasure of emperors. Some emperors were hated so much, Rome tried to erase them. It was called damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory. Their names were chiseled off temples, their faces gouged out of busts, coins melted, statues toppled. Geta, Domitian, Elagabalus, Commodus, all victims of memory damnation. But it didn't work, because the harder you try to erase someone, the louder their ghost screams. Today, the emperors who were hated, the madmen, the monsters, are often the most famous. And the ones who ruled quietly, their names are forgotten,
because history isn't fair. It remembers the flames. The cult of the emperor. For centuries, emperors were worshipped as gods. Temples were built in their names. Priests offered incense to their altars. Soldiers swore oaths not just to Rome, but to the man who ruled it. And long after they died, emperors were immortalized in marble, in memory, in myth. And today we still speak their names: Augustus, Nero, Constantine. Do we remember who they really were, or just the masks they left behind? The Roman Empire rose and fell. It built roads, cities, colosseums. It enslaved nations. It forged laws. It spread ideas that still echo today. But behind every law, behind every war, behind every monument was a face, sometimes wise, sometimes cruel, always human. The emperors didn't rule forever, but their statues remain. Their coins still glint. Their names still whisper through time. And yet, what do we really see when we look at them? Do we see the man or the myth? Do we see Caesar or empire, Nero or madness, Constantine or salvation? Perhaps we see what we want to see, because Rome didn't just rule with swords, it ruled with stories. And in the end, the true face of the emperors was the one they wanted you to remember.